Hello family, enjoy this relaxing moment with Charm Stories. Remember to subscribe and share your thoughts in the comment section. Also generously hit the like button cause it means the world to us. Please sit back, relax and enjoy as we dive into the story. Isabel had always been an early riser, a habit formed from years of trying to get ahead of a busy day. Yet this morning, as the early rays of sunlight pierced through the thin curtains of the bedroom, she felt anything but energized. She was 7 months pregnant with her second child, but unlike her first pregnancy, this one was clouded by a deep loneliness she couldn't shake. A sense of dread hovered around her heart as she thought about the distance growing between her and her husband. She carefully swung her legs over the edge of the bed and placed her feet on the plush rug beneath. Running a hand over her expanding belly, she tried to summon a smile for the baby's sake. After all, she believed that positive energy could somehow reach the child within. Her phone buzzed on the bedside table, but when she picked it up, all she saw was a single message from Daniel. It read, "Don't wait up, I'll be late tonight." That had been sent at around 3 in the morning. There was no warmth in the words, just another cold notice of absence. Isabel sighed, remembering a time when Daniel's messages were filled with little hearts and jokes. He used to sign off with phrases like, "Love you, baby. Miss you already." That had long disappeared. These days, she felt their marriage was held together by only two things: the memory of their happier past and their beloved 5-year-old daughter, Emma. Soft footsteps echoed in the hallway, and Isabel braced herself to greet Emma with a smile. The bedroom door opened to reveal the small girl in her favorite pajamas, pink with cartoon unicorns dancing across the fabric. Emma rubbed her eyes and yawned dramatically. "Morning, Mommy," she said quietly, her dark curls framing a face far too serious for a 5-year-old. "Good morning, sweetheart," Isabel replied, forcing the corners of her mouth to lift. Despite everything, she would do anything to spare Emma from the pain she felt. Emma walked over and gently placed a tiny hand on Isabel's tummy. "Is the baby awake yet?" "I'm sure it's waking up," said Isabel, placing her own hand over Emma's. There was a fluttering movement inside, and it felt like the baby was trying to respond. "You feel that?" Emma's eyes widened. "The baby's saying hi." Her voice filled with excitement, a momentary break from the tension in the house. Isabel nodded, her lips finally curving into a genuine smile. "Yes, sweetheart. The baby's saying hi." It was these moments with Emma that gave Isabel a renewed sense of purpose. She remembered when Daniel would also share in these little family rituals, like talking to the baby and feeling its kicks. The emptiness next to her on the bed served as a painful reminder of how their life had changed. She stood up carefully, holding Emma's hand, and the two of them made their way to the kitchen. The quiet hush of the house, broken only by the hum of the refrigerator, stood in stark contrast to the once lively mornings filled with music, laughter, and Daniel's playful teasing. The kitchen was still cluttered with cereal boxes, snack wrappers, and a few neglected dishes in the sink, remnants of a life that now felt like it was on pause. As she prepared breakfast, pancakes for Emma and oatmeal for herself, Isabel couldn't stop her mind from drifting to the question that haunted her every waking moment. Where is Daniel now, and why doesn't he come home? The front door never opened until late at night, and when he did come home, he was often sullen, dismissive, and distant. The man she once knew to be affectionate and thoughtful had become a stranger. She had tried time and again to spark a conversation, to ask what was wrong, but he would change the subject, walk away, or worse, blame her for overreacting. "Mommy, is Daddy sleeping?" Emma asked, picking at the corner of her pancake. Isabel swallowed, carefully choosing her words. "He's working, baby. Daddy's very busy these days." Emma didn't respond. She just chewed her pancake slowly, her big eyes reflecting a wisdom beyond her years. It saddened Isabel that her daughter's once bright optimism seemed dimmed by the unspoken tension in the household. She wanted to tell Emma that everything would be okay, that families go through rough patches. But her own doubts silenced her. She forced herself to stay strong on the outside, at least for Emma's sake, telling herself that her second pregnancy stress might be overcomplicating her emotions. Yet in her heart, she knew the issue was deeper. Their family was drifting apart. And without the love and support of her husband, Isabel felt the weight of impending motherhood pressing down with double the intensity. As she tidied up after breakfast, she found herself silently praying, "Let our baby's arrival bring us back together." Let it remind Daniel of the good man he used to be. Let our family be whole again. Outside, clouds rolled in over the morning sky, the wind picking up. It was as if nature itself sensed her unease, preparing for a storm that no one could yet see. Little did she know that the real storm in her life was only beginning to take shape. Daniel, seated in his car at a near-deserted parking lot, glanced down at the phone in his lap. A missed call from Isabel flashed on the screen, the latest in a string of attempts she'd made to reach him the night before. Rather than feel guilt, he felt a weary annoyance. He ran a hand through his neatly trimmed hair and pressed the phone's lock button, ignoring the call altogether. His heart raced with a kind of anticipation he hadn't felt in a long time, anticipation not for his wife or unborn child, but for Alyssa. He checked the rear-view mirror, adjusting it out of habit. His own eyes stared back at him, a mixture of excitement and anxiety twisting in the reflection. "What am I doing?" he muttered to himself. Yet he felt powerless to stop. The loneliness and routine of his marriage had convinced him that he deserved something more. More excitement, more passion, more freedom. Daniel spotted Alyssa walking toward the car. Even from a distance, her confident gait captured his attention. She wore a flowing sundress despite the chilly breeze, her hair cascading over her shoulders. Alyssa had a carefree smile that made him feel like he was 20 years old again, unburdened by marital obligations, mortgages, and parental responsibilities. She slid into the passenger seat with an air of casual grace. "Hey you," she said, leaning over to give him a quick kiss on the cheek. Her perfume filled the small space, a sweet and intoxicating scent that contrasted sharply with Isabel's more subtle, homely fragrance. "Hey," he replied, forcing a small smile. But a part of him still squirmed with guilt. He thought briefly of Emma, how she looked up to him with those trusting eyes, and of Isabel, who was undoubtedly struggling at home with her growing belly and the tasks of daily life. The thought was fleeting, however, quickly pushed aside by the allure of Alyssa's presence. She glanced at the phone in his lap. "Wife again?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. Daniel shrugged. "Yeah, it's fine. She's probably just," he trailed off, not wanting to criticize Isabel in front of Alyssa. Yet that was the story he had spun from the beginning, that his marriage was suffocating him, that his wife was too emotional, too needy, too much of everything he didn't want. It had been easy to find pity in Alyssa's ears when he portrayed himself as a man trapped in a loveless, joyless marriage. Alyssa's eyes flickered with something akin to sympathy, or maybe it was curiosity. "I feel for you, Daniel. Being stuck in that kind of situation must be rough." She placed a comforting hand on his arm. "But at least we have each other, right?" He nodded, feeling an odd sense of validation. "Right." He turned the ignition, and the engine hummed to life. They drove off to a nearby cafe, a cozy spot with a warm interior and delicious pastries, the perfect hideaway for their secret rendezvous. Inside, Alyssa led him to a corner booth, away from prying eyes. She laughed as she told him stories about her recent trip with friends, about how they'd gone skydiving on a whim. Daniel found himself enthralled by every word, dazzled by this life he'd convinced himself he was missing out on. The spontaneity, the adrenaline, Alyssa embodied the zest for life he thought he had lost after settling down. In the middle of one of her anecdotes, she reached out and touched his hand. "You look like you have so much on your mind." "What is it?" Daniel hesitated, swirling his coffee cup in its saucer. I'm thinking about how complicated everything's getting. Isabel's due date is coming up in a couple of months, and I feel," his voice trailed off, a knot forming in his stomach. Alyssa's expression softened. "What do you feel?" "Trapped," he answered in a near whisper. Then, as if saying it out loud made it more real, he added, "I know I sound terrible. She's my wife, she's pregnant, and I have a daughter at home. But I'm suffocating." He exhaled sharply, as though releasing a weight from his chest. Alyssa squeezed his hand. "You're not terrible for wanting to be happy. People fall out of love all the time. It happens." Deep down, Daniel knew it was more complex. It wasn't that he had stopped loving Isabel entirely. Rather, he felt overshadowed by the responsibilities of fatherhood and soon-to-be fatherhood again. The nights spent at home, the arguments, the mundane routines. He believed he had lost himself somewhere along the line. Alyssa seemed to represent a life free from constraints, a life where he could be the priority rather than playing the role of caretaker and provider. They left the cafe, strolling through a nearby park. A cool wind brushed past them, rustling the leaves of ancient oaks. He remembered coming to this same park with Isabel during their dating days, how they'd feed ducks and laugh together. Now here he was, doing the same with another woman, a pang of guilt briefly interrupting his sense of thrill. Alyssa wrapped her arm around his waist. "Relax," she teased, noticing his distant gaze. "You look like the world's going to end." Daniel forced a laugh. Maybe it's just the weather. Yet as they continued to walk, he imagined Isabel at home, possibly trying to reach him again, while Emma was probably asking when Daddy would be home. He pictured the crib that still needed assembling for the new baby, the infant clothes that needed washing, the nursery walls that needed painting. All undone. His stomach tightened, but pride and a misguided sense of entitlement overrode the guilt. He told himself that he deserved a break, a moment for himself, something that was exclusively his. By the time Daniel dropped Alyssa off and drove away, the sun was high in the sky, and the burdens of reality crept in again. He glanced at his phone, ignoring a few more messages from Isabel. He knew she was in her third trimester. He knew she was probably feeling anxious and tired, but part of him dismissed her feelings as mere drama. Dialing up his work voicemail, he listened to a message from his supervisor, reminding him of an upcoming project deadline. It was a stark reminder of how precariously he was juggling all aspects of his life. For a moment, he contemplated turning the car around and heading straight home, maybe surprising Isabel and Emma with a lunch outing. But old habits die hard, and he decided to go to the office instead. After all, he reasoned, it's best to keep my head clear with work. In the back of his mind, he told himself everything would settle down eventually. Alyssa was just a phase, a fling that gave him a taste of adventure. His marriage, he rationalized, could still be saved if he ever decided to truly commit. But for now, the lure of excitement was too tempting, and he was convinced that no real damage was being done, as long as Isabel remained unaware. Unfortunately, what Daniel couldn't see was how deeply his absence was already cutting through the fabric of his family. Every moment he spent chasing Alyssa's carefree spirit was another moment chipping away at the foundation he had built with Isabel. And as time wore on, the cracks would only become more visible. Emma sat on the living room floor, coloring a picture of a happy family standing under a rainbow. She'd drawn a bright yellow sun, 2 smiling parents, and a stick-figure child holding hands with them. But despite her usual joy in coloring, her heart felt heavy. She looked up from her drawing, glancing at the front door for the 100th time in the past hour. "Mommy, is Daddy coming home soon?" she asked, her voice tinged with a cautious hope. Isabel, seated on the couch, bit her lip. Her gaze lingered on the phone in her hand. She forced a calm tone. "I'm sure he'll be home later, sweetie. Why don't you show me your picture?" Emma held up her artwork. "I drew us all together. We're at the park, like we used to go on Saturdays." A wave of sadness washed over Isabel as she recalled the early years of their marriage when Saturday trips to the park were sacred family time. She nodded, trying to keep her emotions at bay. "That's beautiful. I love the colors you used." Emma smiled briefly but looked down, as though ashamed of her own hope. Isabel's heart twisted. Her daughter was only 5, but she was perceptive. She sensed Daniel's absence, the tension in the air, and the silent tears her mother tried to hide at night. Later that evening, as Isabel struggled to open a jar of pasta sauce, she felt Emma's gentle tug on her sleeve. "Mommy, can we call Daddy?" For a moment, Isabel froze. She wanted nothing more than to shield Emma from the cold, distant voice that might answer on the other end. Yet Emma's eyes pleaded for a chance to speak to him. With a forced smile, Isabel handed her the phone. "Okay, but if he doesn't answer, we shouldn't bother him too much if he's busy at work, all right?" Emma nodded solemnly. She pressed Daniel's contact icon and waited. 1 ring. 2 rings. 3. Voicemail. Emma frowned, handing the phone back. Isabel took it, her chest tightening with disappointment. "Maybe he's in a meeting," she whispered, trying to sound convincing. "I miss him," Emma said quietly. "We used to watch cartoons together before bedtime." "I know, sweetheart," Isabel replied, blinking away tears. She lifted Emma onto a stool by the kitchen counter so they could prepare dinner together. "Let's make the best pasta ever tonight. We can even set aside a bowl for Daddy when he comes home." It was a small compromise in a world that felt increasingly compromised. That night, Emma picked at her food, asking for Daniel every time the sound of a car door closing echoed outside. "Is that Daddy?" she'd ask, only to be met with Isabel's gentle shake of the head. Eventually, the night grew late, and Emma's eyes drooped with exhaustion. After tucking Emma into bed, Isabel stood in the dimly lit hallway, listening. She could hear the faint whir of the baby monitor from the spare bedroom, waiting for the new occupant. She couldn't help but feel that the nursery's emptiness mirrored the hollowness in her chest. She tiptoed to Emma's room to check on her. By the glow of a small nightlight shaped like a friendly moon, she saw Emma fast asleep, the colored drawing clutched in her hands. Isabel gently tugged the paper from her grasp so it wouldn't crinkle in the night. In that instant, her heart broke at the realization that Emma's family depiction was the ideal they no longer lived. Later, sinking into bed, Isabel scrolled through old photos on her phone. Emma's birthday parties, family vacations, pictures of her and Daniel smiling at each other like there was no one else in the world. She paused on a video from when Emma was just a toddler. Daniel was spinning her around the living room, both of them laughing uncontrollably. Isabel had filmed it, giggling from behind the camera. The warmth of that memory contrasted sharply with the current chill in the air. With a trembling hand, she placed the phone face down. She could feel the baby moving inside her, as if sensing her sorrow. The tears she'd held back all day began to fall. Her attempts to remain strong for Emma seemed pointless, especially alone at night. She prayed for a miracle that might bring Daniel back to them emotionally, not just physically. In the next room, Emma stirred in her sleep, dreamless for the moment. But deep in her subconscious, she stored every overheard argument, every missed bedtime story, and every tearful glance her mother tried to hide. Children, after all, are more observant than adults often realize. She absorbed each sign of discord, and it shaped her developing sense of security, or lack thereof. By morning, the tension was a fixture in their home. Emma would silently watch Isabel stare at her phone during breakfast, hoping for a text or call that rarely came. And when Daniel did appear, usually in the dead of night, he was gone before Emma woke up, leaving behind only the faint smell of his cologne in the hallway. In an attempt to bring back some normalcy, Isabel suggested they go shopping for the new baby's items one weekend. "Emma, let's pick out some cute clothes for your sibling," she said with a forced cheerfulness. "Maybe we can find a matching outfit for you, too." Emma nodded, her eyes lighting up a bit. "Can Daddy come too?" Isabel swallowed. "Daddy is busy, sweetie. But maybe he can meet us there if he finishes work early." They walked through aisles of pastel-colored onesies and cozy blankets. Emma hovered over each display with curiosity, occasionally peeking at the store's entrance, hoping Daniel would walk in. But he never did. Isabel tried to focus on the joy of preparing for a new baby, but a lingering sadness undercut the moment, as if every pastel shade was tinged with gray. When they arrived home, Isabel carefully folded the newly bought clothes into a dresser drawer in the nursery. Emma watched, asking questions about how big her baby sibling would be and whether it would be a boy or a girl. Isabel let Emma place a tiny stuffed rabbit on the crib, gently smoothing its ears. They looked at each other and shared a small smile. It was a quiet, tender moment that needed no words. Then, the front door opened. Emma rushed out with anticipation, only to see Daniel walk in with an air of disinterest, keys jangling in his hand. He spared them a brief glance. "Hey," he said flatly, dropping his jacket on the couch. "Daddy," Emma chirped, running to him. She wrapped her arms around his waist, her little face beaming with relief that he was finally there in daylight. Daniel patted her head, managing a half-smile. "Hey, princess. Been good?" Emma nodded vigorously. Isabel emerged, carrying a folded baby blanket, as if to remind Daniel of their imminent addition. She tried to offer him a warm greeting, but he avoided her eyes, looking around the living room as though it were unfamiliar. He gave a cursory glance at the nursery door, slightly ajar, revealing the newly decorated space. "Looks like you two have been busy," he muttered. Before Isabel could respond, Emma tugged his sleeve excitedly. "Daddy, come see the new clothes we bought for the baby." She was already leading him toward the nursery, her small hand clutching his. Reluctantly, Daniel followed, glancing at the crib, the changing table, and the small dresser bursting with baby items. He nodded, offering a subdued, "Looks nice," before his phone buzzed in his pocket. Quickly, he excused himself and walked out, leaving Emma and Isabel standing there, the magic of the moment disrupted. Though Emma was young, she sensed her father's distance. Her shoulders slumped as she placed the stuffed rabbit on the crib again. Isabel noticed and placed a reassuring hand on her daughter's shoulder. "Daddy's just busy," she whispered, trying to convince Emma, and perhaps herself, that Daniel was still the caring father they once knew. But for Emma, each small moment of neglect or disinterest was like a missing puzzle piece in the picture she drew of her family. She noticed her mother's sad eyes when Daniel brushed past her, the way Isabel tried to hide her tears by claiming she had allergies, and the empty chair at the dinner table that was never filled. She might not have had the words to describe it, but she knew something was tearing them apart. In her silent observations, Emma resolved that she would do everything in her little power to keep her mother safe and happy. She would be extra good, extra obedient, and extra loving, because maybe, just maybe, that would make her father stay. And if he wouldn't stay, then at least she could stand beside her mother, like a tiny soldier safeguarding what remained of their family's warmth. Days turned into weeks, and the rift between Daniel and Isabel only grew. Late at night, Isabel would lie awake in bed, the weight of her unborn child pressing on her lungs, making her breath shallow. She stared at the empty space where Daniel should have been, her mind a cacophony of fears and doubts. One particularly tense evening, she decided enough was enough. Her mind replayed the countless times she had tried to talk to Daniel, only to be dismissed or accused of being too emotional. But tonight, she felt a surge of courage fueled by desperation. When Daniel finally came home after midnight, reeking of cigarette smoke, though he didn't smoke, she stood in the living room with her arms folded protectively over her belly. The lights were low, and the only illumination came from a small lamp that cast long shadows across the hardwood floor. "Daniel," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "We need to talk." He paused in the act of removing his shoes. His expression flickered with irritation. "Isabel, I'm tired. I just want to shower and sleep. And I'm tired of being ignored," she fired back, surprising herself with the intensity of her tone. Her heart pounded, and she had to remind herself to take slow, deep breaths for the baby's sake. "You can't keep pretending everything is normal." He sighed, rubbing his temple. "Fine. Let's get this over with." She hesitated, suddenly unsure of where to begin. "Look at me, Daniel." Her free hand gestured to her swollen stomach. "I'm pregnant with our second child. I feel alone, scared, and you're never here. Emma misses you. She asks about you every single day." He avoided her gaze, folding his arms. "I have a lot on my plate. Work is demanding, and work." "Don't you dare use work as an excuse," she interjected. She took a shaky breath. "We both know your job has never kept you this busy." "Who is she?" His eyes widened slightly. "What are you talking about?" "Don't insult my intelligence," she pleaded, tears burning at the corners of her eyes. "I can smell perfume on your clothes. You come home at odd hours. You ignore my calls and Emma's calls, too. You're turning into a stranger." Daniel's face hardened. "You're overreacting. Maybe the perfume is from a coworker at the office. You know how people give hugs or stand close in meetings." Isabel felt an ache that went beyond betrayal. She felt a different kind of pain now, the pain of being lied to, blatantly, by the man she once trusted with her life. "Overreacting," she repeated, the word echoing in her mind. "That's what you always say. But this isn't just about you anymore. It's about our family." Daniel scoffed, stepping away from her. "Our family," he said in a mocking tone. "You're the one who's too emotional, always nagging, always wanting more from me. Do you think I enjoy coming home to this negativity?" Isabel blinked, stunned by his words. "Negativity?" "Daniel, I'm pregnant and feeling abandoned. Emma sees you only in passing. How could you call this negativity? It's reality." He shook his head, picking up his shoes to retreat. "See? You don't get it. I'm done talking. Go to bed, Isabel. We'll talk another time. But Isabel couldn't let him walk away. She reached out, grabbing his arm gently. Wait. Don't walk away again. Please. I'm worried. I can feel the baby is under stress because I'm constantly upset. I need to know if you still care about us. Daniel's eyes darted from her tear-streaked face to her trembling hand. He took a breath, then spoke in a calmer tone. Look, I'm trying to figure things out. Maybe I need space. Space. Her voice cracked. How do you need space from your family when we're about to welcome a new baby? This is the time we should be closest, not farthest apart. He pulled his arm free. I can't do this right now. And with that, he walked off to the bedroom, leaving Isabel in a swirl of anger, heartbreak, and confusion. She sank onto the couch, tears streaming down her face. The baby kicked within her, almost as if it sensed her anguish. She stroked her belly, whispering apologies and promises she wasn't sure she could keep. I'm sorry, she murmured, feeling torn between her role as a wife holding on to a frayed marriage and a mother trying to provide stability for her children. In the days that followed, Daniel's behavior grew even more distant. He spent more nights out, sometimes not coming home at all. Isabel threw herself into preparing for the baby's arrival, partly as a distraction from the agony of Daniel's neglect. Every time the baby kicked, she would pretend Daniel was right there, sharing the wonder of new life as he had during her first pregnancy. One afternoon, she tried calling Daniel to tell him about an important doctor's appointment she had the next day, hoping he would attend. The phone rang until it went to voicemail. She tried a second time, voicemail again. She left a message, her voice shaky. Daniel, it's me. I have an appointment with Dr. Ramirez tomorrow. It's the checkup for the baby. I'd really like you to come. Please let me know. Emma misses you. I miss you. But Daniel never responded, and he didn't show up. The doctor's appointment went on without him, and Isabel found out the baby was in a breech position. The news frightened her, as it might complicate the delivery if the baby didn't turn. She left the clinic feeling more vulnerable than ever. That night, as she tucked Emma into bed, she forced herself to appear brave. Emma looked up at her. Mommy, are you happy? Isabel's heart clenched. Of course I am, sweetie. I have you, and I have the baby. That makes me very happy. Emma seemed unconvinced. But what about Daddy? Unable to lie, Isabel kissed her daughter's forehead. Things are just a little confusing right now. But no matter what, I'll always love you and your baby brother or sister. Emma nodded, her young mind accepting the incomplete explanation. Isabel turned off the light and closed the door softly, the darkness in the hallway mirroring the uncertainty in her life. As she settled into bed that night, she couldn't stop the fear. Fear that Daniel would walk away entirely, fear that she would have to face childbirth alone, and fear that her children would grow up in a broken home. She whispered a prayer into the silent room, wishing for a sign that all was not lost. Little did she know that everything was about to change, and not necessarily in the way she had prayed for. Sometimes, it takes a crisis to show people the truth about those around them. And for Isabel, that crisis was approaching faster than she ever could have imagined. It started as a dull ache in Isabel's lower back, a sensation she attributed to normal pregnancy discomfort. It was early evening, and the sky outside was darkening. Emma was in her bedroom, playing quietly with her dolls. Isabel had tried to reach Daniel to ask if he could come home for dinner. Unsurprisingly, her calls had gone straight to voicemail. Around 7 o'clock, the dull ache turned into sharp, rhythmic pains. Isabel winced, leaning against the kitchen counter for support. She rubbed her belly, trying to calm herself. She was barely at 35 weeks. Surely it was too early for labor. Maybe these were just Braxton Hicks contractions, a false alarm. She tried to steady her breathing, recalling the techniques she had learned in childbirth classes during her first pregnancy. Another wave of pain hit, more intense this time, nearly bringing her to her knees. Panic started to creep in. She glanced at the clock, 7:15 p.m. Stay calm, she told herself. Just breathe. As the pains became more frequent, she knew something was wrong. She grabbed her phone and dialed Daniel's number. The call rang and rang, echoing in the silent fear pounding in her chest. No answer. She tried texting. I'm in a lot of pain. I think I might be going into labor. Please come home. She waited, pacing the living room floor. 5 minutes passed. 10 minutes. No response. Another contraction racked her body, causing her to groan. Sweat beaded on her forehead. She realized she might need to drive herself to the hospital. But how? With Emma here and the contractions growing stronger, she felt trapped in her own home. She called again, desperation dripping from each ring. After what felt like an eternity, Daniel finally answered. She could hear muffled music and laughter in the background. "What is it?" came his terse greeting. "Daniel," she gasped, clutching the phone against her ear. I'm in labor, or something close. I need you to come home right now." She could almost visualize him rolling his eyes. "Isabel, you're not due yet. You're probably just imagining things. I'm busy. We'll talk later." Tears blurred her vision. "Please, I'm scared. Emma is here, and I can barely stand. I need help." On the other end, she heard a soft giggle that didn't belong to him. "Alyssa." Daniel's voice grew distant. "Look, just call someone else if you're that worried. I'll come by if I can." He hung up before she could reply. Isabel stared at the phone in disbelief, tears spilling over her cheeks. Another contraction struck like a punch to her abdomen, leaving her breathless. She crumpled onto the couch, gasping for air. In that moment, her hope shattered like glass. The reality that Daniel wasn't coming was a bitter pill to swallow. She tried calling an ambulance, but the lines were busy, unusual, but possible in a large city with many emergencies at once. She thought of the neighbors, but most were gone for the holiday weekend. She felt more alone than ever, pain radiating through her entire body. Suddenly, Emma appeared, her eyes wide with alarm. "Mommy." Isabel forced herself upright. "Sweetheart, listen. I need you to be a big girl and help Mommy, okay?" Emma nodded, her little hands shaking. "What do I do?" Isabel inhaled sharply, fighting back tears. "Help me get to the car." She prayed she could drive to the hospital. She prayed she could handle the contractions long enough to get there. Slowly, painfully, Isabel managed to stand. She leaned heavily on the wall as another contraction took hold, then gulped in air. Emma hovered at her side, trying to support her mother with trembling arms. Step by excruciating step, they moved toward the front door. But halfway there, Isabel's legs gave out. She collapsed onto the floor, crying out in agony. Emma stood frozen, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Mommy, what do I do? I'm scared." Isabel mustered what strength she had left. "It's okay. It's okay," she panted, trying to maintain composure for her daughter's sake. "We just need help." Emma looked around desperately. The quiet suburban street outside offered no solution. Most houses were dark. She remembered her mother often saying that if you need help, you should knock on a neighbor's door. Emma darted outside, running to the closest house. She pounded on the door, but no one answered. Panicking, she tried the next house, again with no luck. Tears blurred her vision as she sprinted back to her mother, who lay on the living room floor with labored breathing. "It's going to be okay," Isabel said in a hoarse whisper. She wasn't sure if she was reassuring Emma or herself. The pain was almost unbearable now, each contraction closer and more intense. She gripped the couch cushion, her knuckles white, and glanced at her phone. Still no message from Daniel. Then, by the grace of fate, a faint light flickered through the window. A passerby, walking their dog, appeared on the sidewalk. Emma saw the figure and ran outside, waving her arms. "Help! Please help!" The stranger hurried over, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, wearing a bright green windbreaker. She took one look at Emma's tear-streaked face and rushed in. Inside, she found Isabel pale and doubled over on the floor. "Oh my God, we need to get you to a hospital," the woman said, dialing emergency services on her cell phone. This time, the line rang through. She barked directions at the operator, explaining the situation as best she could. Isabel heard fragments of conversation. Pregnant, earlier than expected, severe pain. She wanted to explain more, but another contraction stole her words. She felt Emma's small hand in hers, and for a moment, the warmth of that touch gave her strength. "I'll drive you," the stranger said urgently after ending the call. "An ambulance might take too long, and you seem like you can't wait." With Emma's help, the woman managed to half-carry, half-walk Isabel to her car, buckling her into the back seat. Emma climbed in beside her, tears still brimming in her eyes. As the car pulled away, Isabel lay back, trying to focus on her breathing. She felt terrified and grateful all at once. If not for this kind stranger, what would have happened to her and her unborn child? Amid the flashing streetlights and the rush of passing cars, Isabel stared at the phone in her hand. A single tear rolled down her cheek as she whispered, "He didn't come." She closed her eyes, clinging to Emma's hand. Despite the pain, the heartbreak, and the uncertainty, she felt a surge of resolve. Somehow, she had to be strong enough for herself and for her children. Because Daniel clearly wasn't. In the front seat, the stranger pressed on the gas, weaving through traffic. Emma, her eyes filled with silent determination, never let go of her mother's hand. She softly whispered, "It's gonna be okay, Mommy." Isabel forced a nod, focusing on her daughter's words like a lifeline. She willed herself to believe it, but deep down, a part of her felt that their family had already been irrevocably changed. What awaited them at the hospital, and whether Daniel would finally realize the severity of his choices, remained to be seen. But this was the night that everything changed, the night Isabel truly understood that she might have to walk this path alone. From the moment Emma had sprinted outside to find help, her heart had thudded so hard in her chest she feared it might burst. She was just 5 years old, but seeing her mother collapsing in pain ignited a fierce determination. She couldn't just stand by and do nothing. Now, in the back seat of the stranger's car, Emma held onto Isabel's hand with all her might. Isabel's forehead glistened with sweat, and her breathing was labored. The woman driving, whose name was Michelle, as she had introduced herself, kept glancing in the rear-view mirror. "Hang in there. The hospital isn't too far," Michelle said, her voice tense but reassuring. Emma looked around the car. She noticed an empty plastic bottle and some napkins in the console. She remembered from a TV show that sometimes you had to help keep someone awake when they were in pain. Carefully, she grabbed a napkin, reached forward, and tapped Michelle's shoulder. "May I have some water for Mommy?" she asked, her voice quivering. Michelle glanced back sympathetically. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. I don't have water here. But we'll be there soon, okay?" Emma nodded, her small hand trembling as she placed the napkin on Isabel's forehead to blot the sweat. "Mommy, stay awake, okay?" Isabel's eyelids fluttered, and she squeezed Emma's hand. "I'm okay," she managed, though her voice was weak. In truth, her pain felt unbearable, and she feared losing consciousness. They raced through the streets, the city lights forming streaks of color outside the windows. Emma felt the car lurch as Michelle swerved around slower vehicles. She heard the faint honk of a horn and the screech of tires. They were going fast, faster than Emma had ever gone before. But all she cared about was getting Mommy to safety. When the hospital's bright emergency entrance came into view, relief flooded Emma's chest. A cluster of nurses and paramedics rushed out as Michelle pulled up, alerted by her frantic call. The headlights illuminated the scene, white coats, a gurney, and urgent voices. Isabel was lifted gently onto the gurney, her face twisted in pain. Emma jumped out of the car and tried to follow, but a nurse gently held her back. "Sweetie, give them room. We'll take you to your Mommy in a moment." Emma felt tears burning in her eyes, but she nodded, determined not to cry. She stood with Michelle, watching as they whisked Isabel through the sliding glass doors. Everything was happening so fast. The overhead lights in the hospital corridor were glaringly bright compared to the dim car, but Emma stayed close, making sure she could still see where her mother was being taken. A nurse crouched down to Emma's level, speaking softly. "Is your daddy coming?" Emma's eyes flickered with uncertainty. She didn't know how to answer. I called him, but he wouldn't come. "It's just Mommy and me," she managed, her voice wavering. The nurse's gaze softened. Okay, sweetheart. Don't worry. We'll take good care of your mommy. Is there another grown-up we can call? Emma turned to Michelle, and the kind stranger nodded. I can stay for as long as needed, Michelle offered. I'm Michelle, by the way. The nurse gently led them to a waiting area. All right, Michelle. Let's get some details from you both. We'll do everything we can to help. While the hospital staff stabilized Isabel, Emma and Michelle waited on stiff, plastic chairs under fluorescent lights that buzzed like distant bees. Emma's legs dangled off the chair, unable to reach the ground. She fidgeted nervously, clutching her favorite stuffed bunny she had grabbed last minute while leaving the house. Michelle placed a comforting arm around her. Your mom is in the best possible hands right now, Emma. She's going to be okay. Emma nodded, forcing herself to be brave. She remembered how she had always been taught that grown-ups took care of kids, but here she was, having to take care of her mom. A part of her felt proud to have found help, but another part was terrified about what would happen next. After what felt like an eternity, a nurse approached them. She offered Emma a small smile. Your mom is in the maternity ward now. She was experiencing premature labor, but we're monitoring her closely. The good news is that her vital signs are stable. Emma exhaled a shaky breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Can I see her? Soon, honey. Let's just give the doctors a little more time. The nurse turned to Michelle. Thank you for bringing her in. Michelle nodded. Of course. I'll stay as long as I'm needed. Emma clutched her stuffed bunny tighter. She wondered if her dad would show up now that things were serious. She looked around at the other people in the waiting room, some old, some young, all with varying degrees of worry etched on their faces. She felt an odd kinship with them, bound by fear and hope for their loved ones. Not long after, Emma saw a figure rush through the sliding doors. Her heart leapt, thinking it might be Daniel. But it wasn't. It was one of Isabel's friends, Carla, who had apparently received a frantic text from Isabel before she collapsed. Carla was panting, her eyes darting around until she spotted Emma. Emma. Carla crouched down, pulling Emma into a hug. Oh, sweetie, are you all right? Tears of relief flooded Emma's eyes as she nodded. Mommy's sick, but the doctors said she's stable. Carla looked up at Michelle. Thank you so much for helping her. I'm Carla, a friend of the family. Michelle extended her hand. Michelle. Happy to help. Emma was incredibly brave. Carla brushed the hair from Emma's forehead. We'll wait together for news, okay? They didn't have to wait much longer. A doctor, wearing scrubs and a kind expression, approached them. Is their family here for Isabel? Carla stood, placing a protective hand on Emma's shoulder. We're here. How is she? She's stable, the doctor reassured them. She's definitely in early labor, which is concerning at 35 weeks. We've given her medication to try to delay the labor. The baby is showing some signs of stress, but we're doing everything we can to keep both mother and child safe. She keeps asking about Emma. Emma's eyes shone with tears, and she swallowed a lump in her throat. Can I see Mommy, please? The doctor nodded. Yes, of course. Follow me. Carla and Emma trailed behind, while Michelle lingered in the waiting area, giving them a reassuring wave as if to say she'd be close by. They walked through corridors that smelled of antiseptic, passing rooms where people in various states of health lay. The sound of monitors beeping and hushed voices created a tense chorus. When Emma finally entered Isabel's room, her heart clenched at the sight. Isabel lay on a hospital bed, hooked to an 4 and a fetal monitor strapped around her belly. She looked pale and exhausted, but when she saw Emma, her face broke into a relieved smile. Baby. Isabel's voice was shaky as Emma hurried to her side. Isabel took Emma's hand, kissing it gently. Are you okay? Emma nodded, her tears threatening to spill. I'm okay. I was scared. Isabel's gaze flickered with guilt. I'm so sorry you had to go through that. You're so brave. Thank you, my sweet girl. Carla placed a comforting hand on Isabel's shoulder. I'm here now, and I can stay as long as you need. Isabel's eyes shone with gratitude. "Thank you, Carla." Just then, her phone buzzed on the bedside table. She picked it up, her brows furrowing at the sight of Daniel's name on the screen. A swirl of conflicting emotions welled up in her. Part of her wanted to scream at him for leaving her in such a vulnerable moment. Another part just wanted him there, safe by her side. She answered in a hushed tone, "Daniel?" His voice came through, sounding frantic. "Isabel, I just saw your messages. Where are you? Are you okay?" She closed her eyes, exhaling slowly. "I'm at the hospital. Emma and I had to find help on our own." He paused, seemingly at a loss for words. "I'm coming right now." Isabel ended the call without responding, tears welling up again. She hated that she still felt relieved at the thought of him coming. She felt betrayed, abandoned, yet deep in her heart, she yearned for the man she once knew him to be. Carla and Emma watched quietly, sensing the storm of emotions raging behind Isabel's tired eyes. For now, though, all that mattered was that Isabel was being cared for, and Emma was safe. Soon enough, Daniel would arrive, and the fragments of their broken family would collide in the sterile light of a hospital room. Still clinging to her daughter's hand, Isabel closed her eyes and whispered a shaky prayer of gratitude that the baby was still all right. Emma stroked her mother's hair gently, offering comfort in a moment where the roles of caretaker and cared for seemed reversed. Somewhere outside that room, a nurse was finishing up paperwork, Michelle was waiting to see if she could do more, and Daniel was speeding through city streets, wrestling with guilt and fear. The entire world had become an orchestra of efforts converging to save a mother and her unborn child, all set in motion by a brave little girl who refused to let her family fall apart, no matter how precariously it was hanging by a thread. Daniel's heart pounded like a drum. He sped through the city, weaving in and out of traffic with reckless abandon. The neon lights of late-night restaurants and bars blurred past him, a chaotic tapestry of color against the darkness. Every fiber of his being was electrified by panic. When he read Isabel's final text, "I'm in a lot of pain. I think I might be going into labor. Please come home," something inside him snapped. Alyssa had laughed it off, telling him to relax and that Isabel was probably overreacting. But as the night wore on, an uneasy feeling gnawed at him. He couldn't ignore the fact that she was nearing her due date, nor could he ignore the pang of guilt at the thought of Emma alone in the house, frightened. Frustration welled up in him as he found himself stuck at a red light. He slammed the steering wheel. Come on," he muttered, anxiously tapping his foot. He thought about the call he had just had with Isabel, how frail her voice had sounded. She had told him they were at the hospital, and though she hadn't yelled or cried, he heard the pain in her voice. A part of him realized, with startling clarity, how low he had sunk. Here he was, rushing to the hospital, unsure if Isabel or the baby was safe. And it was all because he had chosen to stay out with Alyssa, ignoring Isabel's pleas. He ran a hand through his hair, a cold sweat breaking out on his forehead. He felt like a coward, a traitor to his own family. When the light finally turned green, he pressed down on the accelerator, adrenaline fueling him. Each minute that passed felt like an hour. Visions of Isabel on a hospital bed, alone, twisted his stomach. Even more haunting was the image of Emma, her big, worried eyes searching for comfort in a father who wasn't there. At last, he screeched into the hospital parking lot, the tires squealing. He nearly forgot to turn off the ignition as he jumped out, sprinting toward the emergency entrance. Inside, the fluorescent lights reflected off sterile white walls. He hurried to the front desk, panting. "I'm looking for my wife, Isabel Hart," he said breathlessly. She came in. "She's pregnant and might be in labor." The receptionist tapped rapidly on a keyboard. "She's in maternity. Second floor. Room 206. Take that elevator to the left." Daniel mumbled a quick, "Thank you," and sprinted to the elevator. His heart was in his throat as he jabbed the tube button, praying the elevator would move faster. When the doors slid open on the second floor, he followed the signage to room 206, ignoring the curious stares of nurses and visitors. He found the room at last. The door was partially ajar, and he could see Isabel lying on the hospital bed, hooked to monitors. Emma sat close by, holding her mother's hand. A wave of relief and dread washed over him. He hesitated for a split second, aware that he had no idea what to say or do. Then he stepped inside. Emma looked up first, her eyes widening. "Daddy," she exclaimed, but there was a tremor of sadness and accusation in her voice. She didn't run to him, she remained by Isabel, her primary concern. Isabel turned her head, locking eyes with Daniel. Her gaze was filled with exhaustion, pain, and something else, disappointment. A flicker of anger, perhaps. But she said nothing, simply closed her eyes again as if she couldn't bear to see him. Daniel approached the bed slowly, guilt twisting like a knife in his gut. I got here as soon as I could," he said lamely. He reached out to touch Isabel's hand, but she pulled it back, her expression guarded. Pain tensed her face as another contraction rippled through her body. A nurse stepped in, holding a clipboard. "You must be the father," she stated, her tone professional but cool. "We're monitoring your wife. She's in preterm labor, and we've administered medication to try and stop or at least slow it down. The baby's vitals are stable now, but we have to be very careful." Daniel swallowed. Are they both going to be okay?" The nurse nodded, but the lines of concern on her face didn't vanish. "We're hopeful. The next 24 hours are critical. We'll see how her body responds. If the labor progresses, we may have to prepare for an early delivery." A wave of nausea swept through him. He looked at Isabel, wanting to say something, anything, to alleviate the tension. But he felt paralyzed by shame. Finally he managed, "Isabel, I'm sorry. I should have been there." She let out a shaky breath, not meeting his gaze. "Yes, you should have," she replied, her voice a blend of hurt and anger. Emma looked up, tears glistening in her eyes at the tension. Isabel softened slightly for her daughter's sake. "Why don't you take Emma for a short walk? I need to rest, and the nurses want to run a few more tests." Emma glanced at Daniel, uncertain. She seemed torn between loyalty to her mother and the small hope that her father was back. Isabel gave her a little nod, and Emma slid off the chair, walking over to Daniel. She slipped her hand into his, but her grip felt tentative. Outside the room, the hallway was eerily quiet, the only sounds coming from distant chatter and the beep of monitors. Daniel guided Emma to a small waiting area with vending machines and a handful of uncomfortable chairs. They sat, and for a moment, neither spoke. He cleared his throat. "Emma, I'm sorry," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "I know I haven't been around much." She looked at him, tears pooling in her eyes. "Mommy was scared. I was scared, too. I tried calling you, but you didn't come." Her words were like a punch in the gut. Daniel tried to swallow the lump in his throat. "I know. I'm so sorry. I made a mistake." Emma's bottom lip quivered. "Why aren't you at home anymore? Why don't we watch cartoons together?" Daniel fought back tears. He wanted to find a simple answer, something that wouldn't shatter her innocence. Grown-ups make bad decisions sometimes. But that doesn't mean I don't love you or Mommy. I do." She nodded, but the sadness in her eyes told him she wasn't entirely convinced. Daniel wrapped an arm around her small shoulders, pulling her close. She felt so fragile, so precious. He realized how much he stood to lose. "Let's go back to Mommy's room," Emma finally whispered. "I don't want her to be alone." Daniel nodded, swallowing his regrets. He stood and took Emma's hand. Together, they walked down the hallway to rejoin Isabel. As they entered the room, Carla, Isabel's friend, was sitting by the bed, talking quietly to Isabel. Carla shot Daniel a wary glare, but said nothing. Isabel looked up, her expression weary. "Hey, Emma," she said softly, forcing a small smile for her daughter's sake. Emma went to her side, placing her small hand over Isabel's. Daniel stood a few steps away, feeling like an intruder in his own family's crisis. He could sense Isabel's emotional walls, built higher than ever before. "I did this," he thought. "I drove her away." For the next few hours, he hovered, occasionally bringing cups of ice chips or asking the nurse questions about Isabel's condition. He tried to reach out to her, but each time she rebuffed him with polite but distant replies. The message was clear: She was letting him stay because they were in a medical emergency, not because she trusted him again. Night wore on, and the hospital lights dimmed in the hallways. Emma fell asleep in a chair, her head resting against Carla's arm. Isabel, drifting in and out of conscious rest, never let go of her daughter's hand. Daniel watched them both, a pang of jealousy twisting inside him. Emma had turned to Carla for comfort, and Isabel seemed to take solace only in Emma's presence. In that quiet space, Daniel had no escape from his own thoughts. He realized how fragile life could be, how easily one could lose it all through negligence and selfishness. He recalled the night's events, Isabel's frantic calls, Emma's desperation, the rush to the hospital. The memory of ignoring Isabel's calls and texts stung like a fresh wound. He closed his eyes, trying to push away the image of Alyssa's carefree smile. Suddenly, her allure seemed hollow, a mirage that had led him astray. The thought of losing Isabel, losing his children, filled him with a regret so profound it made his stomach churn. As dawn approached, the hospital staff began their early morning rounds. Daniel stood by the window, watching as the first rays of sunlight broke through the horizon, painting the sky with a mixture of pink and orange. A new day was beginning, but he wondered if it would bring a new chapter or simply mark another day of regret. In that moment, Daniel vowed silently that if Isabel and the baby made it through this, he would do whatever it took to put his family back together. He didn't know if it was too late, but he knew he had to try. It was a promise born out of fear, love, and remorse, a promise he wasn't sure Isabel would ever want to hear, let alone believe. But a promise it was, and it was the only glimmer of hope he had left. The morning rays filtered through the hospital room's blinds, creating narrow stripes of light across the floor. Isabel stirred from a fitful sleep, blinking against the brightness. A dull ache lingered in her abdomen, but she felt a measure of relief that the contractions had lessened overnight. The medication appeared to be working. Emma was curled up in a chair, sleeping peacefully. Carla had dozed off in another chair, arms folded across her chest. Isabel glanced around, noticing Daniel sitting awkwardly on the edge of the window ledge, elbows on his knees. He looked as though he hadn't slept at all. She shifted her gaze back to the ceiling, her mind replaying the events of the previous night. The pain, the terror, Emma's heroic effort to find help, and Daniel's absence until it was almost too late. She found herself grappling with conflicting emotions, relief that he was here now, anger for his betrayal, and a raw loneliness she couldn't articulate. A gentle knock on the door broke the silence. Dr. Ramirez, the obstetrician overseeing her case, entered with a warm smile. "Good morning, Isabel. How are you feeling?" "Better," she replied, forcing a polite tone. "Thank you for everything you've done." Dr. Ramirez nodded, checking the fetal monitor readings and Isabel's vitals. "The contractions have subsided significantly. We'll keep you under observation for another 24 hours. If everything remains stable, you might be able to go home tomorrow, on bed rest." She paused, her expression turning serious. "That said, stress can have a big impact on preterm labor. You'll need a very calm environment to keep the contractions at bay." Isabel swallowed, aware of the unspoken implications. "Yes, of course. I understand." Daniel stood, clearing his throat. "I'll make sure of that," he said, though his voice quivered with uncertainty. Dr. Ramirez gave him a measured nod before heading out, leaving them in a thick tension. Carla stirred awake, rolling her shoulders. "Morning," she mumbled, giving Isabel a reassuring look. Then she noticed Daniel standing, and her expression turned guarded. "You should rest, Isabel. I can stay with you today." Isabel nodded slowly. Part of her wanted Carla to stay forever, if only to avoid being alone with Daniel. But she knew she couldn't dodge him indefinitely. Eventually, Carla left to grab coffee, and Emma was still asleep, leaving Daniel and Isabel in strained silence. He took a step closer to her bed. "Isabel, about last night." "I don't want to talk about it right now," she said softly but firmly, gazing at the ceiling. Her voice trembled despite her attempt to remain stoic. "We can't fight here. I don't have the strength for it." He swallowed. "I'm not trying to fight. I just want to say I'm sorry." She turned her head to face him, her eyes glinting with a mixture of pain and anger. Do you have any idea what it felt like? To be in agony, unable to stand, while Emma, a 5-year-old, had to run outside and find a stranger because you wouldn't answer my calls. Daniel bowed his head, shame burning his cheeks. I messed up, Isabel. She laughed bitterly. That's putting it mildly. Do you even know how scared Emma was? She practically saved my life, and the baby's. He reached out to gently touch her hand, but she pulled it away. Undeterred, he kept his voice low, mindful of Emma sleeping a few feet away. I've been a fool. I know that. I'm done with, he hesitated, reluctant to say Alyssa's name. I'm done with the other woman. I realize now what I stand to lose. Isabel looked away, blinking back tears. You think it's that simple? You hurt me, Daniel. You broke our family's trust. Apologies won't fix it overnight. I know, he whispered, tears brimming in his own eyes. He looked at Emma, who was stirring awake. He lowered his voice further. But please, let me prove I can do better. Isabel didn't respond immediately. 1,000 thoughts swirled in her mind. The betrayal, the night she cried alone, the near-tragic events of the previous day. Even now, her body ached from the stress. Could she really find it in her heart to forgive him? Or had that moment passed? Emma sat up, rubbing her eyes. She noticed the tension in the room and frowned. Mommy? Daddy? Isabel mustered a reassuring smile for Emma. Good morning, sweetheart. I'm okay. The baby is okay. Emma climbed down from the chair and shuffled over to Isabel's bedside. She looked up at her father. Are you staying here now, Daddy? Daniel crouched beside her. Yes, I am. I'm not going anywhere. Emma studied him quietly, as if trying to decide whether to believe him. Finally, she said, Mommy was very scared. Don't make her scared again. Daniel's throat tightened. I won't, he vowed, hugging Emma gently. She allowed the hug, but her small arms remained somewhat stiff around his neck. It broke his heart to see her doubt. Yet it also steeled his resolve to make things right. The rest of the morning passed in a haze of nurses checking vitals, Carla returning with coffee, and short visits from well-wishers who had heard about Isabel's condition. Each time a visitor left, the tension between Daniel and Isabel felt more acute. They needed to talk, but the hospital setting made it nearly impossible. Neither wanted to upset Emma further or risk another spike in stress for Isabel. By afternoon, Dr. Ramirez returned to confirm that Isabel's condition had stabilized. You're doing well, she said, examining the fetal monitor printout. We're still aiming for you to carry to term if possible, but you need to avoid any emotional strain. Absolute rest. Isabel nodded, exhaustion evident in her eyes. She felt drained, like every muscle in her body had been twisted in knots. I'll do my best. Once the doctor left, Carla pulled on her jacket. I'm going to grab some lunch for Emma. Any requests? Emma perked up. Grilled cheese. Carla chuckled. Grilled cheese it is. She glanced at Isabel and Daniel. I'll be back soon. With Carla gone, Emma sat on the chair, absent-mindedly flipping through a children's magazine. Sensing an opportunity for a quieter moment, Daniel gently whispered, Emma, do you want to pick a snack from the vending machine? Emma's eyes flickered between her parents before nodding. She slid off her seat, and Daniel took her hand. He cast a questioning look at Isabel, who gave him a wordless nod. As they left the room, Daniel felt a bitter swirl in his stomach, wishing he could stay by Isabel's side but also aware that Emma needed reassurance. While alone, Isabel sighed, letting her head sink into the pillow. She closed her eyes, wrestling with a question she had avoided asking herself directly. Can I ever forgive him? She felt the baby move inside her, reminding her that she wasn't just making decisions for herself anymore. A broken family could have lasting effects on their children, but so could a marriage devoid of trust. A short while later, Daniel and Emma returned with a small bag of chips and a juice box. Emma hopped onto her chair, quietly munching. Daniel stood by Isabel's bedside, hesitating before speaking in a hushed tone. I know this isn't the place, he began, but once you're out of here, we'll have to talk. About everything. Isabel nodded, her voice almost a whisper. We will. But for now, I need to focus on getting better. That's it. One step at a time. The next hours brought more medical checks and eventual instructions for Isabel's discharge. By evening, the doctors decided she could go home the following morning if her vitals remained stable overnight. Carla made arrangements to drive them, as Daniel had come to the hospital alone and didn't want to leave the car behind. Emma was relieved to hear they'd be returning home soon. She hated the antiseptic smell of the hospital and the unfamiliar machines. "Will you be home too, Daddy?" she asked, glancing timidly at Daniel. He knelt beside her. "Yes, sweetheart. I promise I'll be there." Isabel said nothing, but inside, her emotions churned. She remembered how many nights she'd spent waiting in vain for him to come home. "He's made promises before," she reminded herself. "Should I believe him now?" Night fell once more, and the hospital corridor lights dimmed. Isabel managed to drift into a fitful sleep, the first decent rest she'd had in days. Emma slept beside her in a makeshift cot, while Daniel stayed on a couch in the corner, twisting and turning in discomfort. Carla dozed off in another chair, arms crossed defensively. In the stillness, Daniel found no solace. His guilt gnawed at him, each beep of the monitor reminding him of the fragility of Isabel's condition. He listened to her breathing, each soft exhale a reminder that he almost lost them all. The weight of responsibility pressed down like a boulder on his chest, but a seed of resolve glowed faintly in his heart. He would own his mistakes and try to atone for them, even if that meant letting Isabel walk away if she chose to. He owed her at least that much honesty. The reality he had avoided confronting for so long was finally staring him in the face. Love isn't just about what you can get from someone, it's about what you're willing to give, especially when it's hard. And if he wanted any chance of reclaiming the life he'd recklessly tossed aside, he would have to fight for it, one day at a time. Early the next morning, the hospital bustle began anew. Nurses replaced 4 bags, checked vitals, and offered smiles to the patients. Dr. Ramirez entered with her usual calm demeanor, confirming that Isabel's condition had remained stable overnight. A discharge form awaited her signature, along with strict instructions for bed rest and follow-up appointments. Isabel nodded through the lecture, too tired to argue. She knew she needed rest, knew she had to keep her stress levels down if she wanted to carry the baby closer to full term. Daniel stood nearby, uncharacteristically silent, occasionally helping to gather her belongings. Carla and Emma watched from the corner, Emma clutching her stuffed bunny as if it were a lifeline. Once the discharge was finalized, Carla helped wheel Isabel to the hospital entrance in a standard-issue wheelchair while Daniel trailed behind. Outside, the morning sun was bright, and a light breeze made the air pleasantly cool. They loaded Isabel carefully into Carla's car, Emma climbing in beside her. Daniel paused, looking uncertain. "I'll follow you in my car." Carla shrugged, not bothering to hide her wariness. "Suit yourself." She closed the door behind Emma and Isabel, then walked around to the driver's seat. The drive home was quiet. Isabel dozed, leaning her head against the window, while Emma stared out at passing houses and trees. Carla's eyes flickered between the road and the rear-view mirror, concern etched across her features. At their house, everything looked eerily unchanged. The yard was the same, the driveway empty except for Daniel's car pulling up behind Carla's. But the tension in the air was palpable. Carla helped Isabel inside, guiding her to the bedroom. Emma followed, reluctant to let her mother out of sight. "I'll be in the living room if you need anything," Carla said gently, placing a supportive hand on Isabel's arm. "Remember what the doctor said, rest, minimal stress." Isabel forced a smile. "Thank you. For everything." Carla nodded, then stepped out, leaving Isabel alone with Emma. In the living room, Daniel hovered near the door, feeling like an unwelcome visitor in his own home. Carla, arms folded, regarded him with a pointed glare. "I'll head out soon," she said. "I just wanted to make sure Isabel was settled." Her voice softened slightly. "But know this, if you stress her out again, I'll personally drag you out of this house." He swallowed hard. "I understand," he replied, grateful that Carla cared enough to advocate for Isabel, even though it meant a harsh warning. He respected her protective loyalty, something he knew he had compromised in his own role. When Carla left, The house fell into an uneasy silence, broken only by the sound of Isabel's soft conversation with Emma in the bedroom. Daniel approached slowly, peeking in to find Isabel propped up on a stack of pillows. Emma had climbed onto the bed, her small hand on Isabel's arm as if to physically anchor her there. Daniel cleared his throat. "Hey, do you need anything? Water, maybe?" Isabel looked at him, her expression impassive. "Water would be good, yes." He nodded, hurrying to the kitchen. The sink was piled with dishes, a testament to how little time Isabel had been able to spend tending the house. Guiltily, he realized that he should have been the one taking care of these tasks. As he filled a glass, he remembered when they used to do chores together, laughing about small messes, planning their future. How had everything changed so drastically? Returning to the bedroom, he handed Isabel the water. She took it, sipping carefully. Emma glanced between her parents, sensing the tension. After a moment, Isabel looked down at Emma. "Sweetheart, why don't you go to your room for a bit? I need to talk to Daddy privately." Emma hesitated, eyes wide. "Will you be okay?" Isabel nodded. "Yes, baby. I'm just going to talk. Nothing scary, I promise." Emma slid off the bed, clutching her bunny to her chest, and walked out. She glanced back once, her eyes darting nervously between them. When she was gone, Isabel set the water aside, meeting Daniel's gaze. "All right," she said quietly. "We're home. So let's talk." Daniel swallowed the lump in his throat. He wanted to reach for her hand, but feared she would recoil. "I'm so sorry, Isabel. I know an apology isn't enough, but I need you to hear it." She nodded, her face betraying no emotion. "Go on. I've been horrible. I got caught up in my own selfish needs, my own desire for excitement, or I don't even know. I forgot what's important." His voice trembled with suppressed emotion. "I hurt you, I scared Emma, and I almost lost our baby. If anything had happened to you or the baby—" He trailed off, voice cracking. Isabel's eyes glistened, but she blinked back tears. "I don't know if I can trust you anymore. You walked out on Emma and me, emotionally if not physically. And last night, I was in pain, and you dismissed me." "I know," he said, choking back tears. "I regret it more than I can say." Silence stretched between them. Outside, a lawnmower hummed from a distant neighbor's yard, a mundane reminder that the world kept turning despite their family crisis. Finally, Isabel spoke again. "I loved you, Daniel. I still do. But I can't just pretend nothing happened. You have to understand, the pain you caused won't go away overnight." She placed a protective hand over her belly. "I have to think about this baby and Emma. I can't subject them to uncertainty or instability." He nodded, tears now flowing freely. "I'll do whatever it takes. I'll move out if you want me to. I'll give you space. But I swear, I want to fix this. I want to be the husband and father you deserve." Isabel looked away, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I don't know if that's possible, Daniel. Even if you end your affair, even if you do everything right from now on. I'm broken. I'm not sure I have it in me to forgive you." Her words hit him like a physical blow. Still, he managed to steady his voice. "I understand. But please, let me stay and help you through this pregnancy. Let me take care of Emma, of you. Even if you can't forgive me, at least let me be here to support you." Isabel's expression wavered. The thought of going through the remainder of her pregnancy alone terrified her. She remembered the hospital, the contractions, the fear in Emma's eyes. She also remembered how Daniel eventually showed up, how he had stayed through the night. Did that count for something? Could she risk letting him in again? Her voice was barely above a whisper. "I need time." He nodded, relief and sorrow mixing in his chest. "You have it. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere." She wiped her eyes and settled back against the pillows, exhaustion creasing her features. "I can't handle any more fighting. You'll stay in the guest room. We'll figure out the rest after the baby is born." "Anything," he agreed, nodding vigorously. Whatever makes you comfortable. I promise I'll do my part. Isabel closed her eyes, signaling the end of the conversation. Daniel left the room quietly, his heart heavy but burning with a renewed sense of responsibility. In the hallway, he found Emma peeking from behind her bedroom door. When she saw him, she stepped out, a fearful question in her eyes. "Is Mommy okay?" He forced a reassuring smile, kneeling down. "She's okay. She just needs rest. I'm going to stay here to help." Emma's tense posture relaxed slightly. "You promise you'll stay?" He placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "I promise." The moment hung between them, laden with hope and uncertainty. For Emma, it was a tentative step toward believing her father might be coming back to them for real. For Daniel, it was a solemn vow to reclaim the role he had forsaken. For Isabel, who lay behind the closed door, it was a flicker of possibility that might either reignite their family bond or smolder into the ashes of regret. In the weeks that followed, the household settled into a fragile routine. Daniel took on the chores with a zeal born from guilt and a genuine desire to make amends. He cleaned dishes, vacuumed floors, and took Emma to school, something he hadn't done in months. Isabel mostly stayed in bed or on the couch, heeding the doctor's orders for rest. He maintained his distance, sleeping in the guest room. Late at night, he often lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying his mistakes. The memory of Alyssa's carefree laughter now felt hollow, reminding him only of what he risked losing forever. He worked from home as much as possible, occasionally stepping out for brief errands, always checking in on Isabel before leaving. Emma observed her father's new behavior with cautious optimism. He was present, attentive, and no longer snapping at Isabel. In the evenings, he read Emma bedtime stories, her face lighting up with a mix of joy and relief. Yet she noticed that when she kissed her mother goodnight, Isabel's eyes often glistened with tears. Sometimes, Emma would crawl into bed beside Isabel, placing a protective hand over her pregnant belly, as though standing guard over them both. One afternoon, Isabel managed to walk into the living room, leaning on the furniture for support. She found Daniel sitting at the dining table, poring over some paperwork. He looked up, surprised but pleased to see her upright. "Do you need anything?" he asked, standing. She shook her head. "I just wanted to see how you're doing." His eyes softened. "I'm okay. Just handling some finances, making sure everything's in order before the baby comes." She eased into a chair, exhaling slowly. "Thank you." They fell into silence. Outside, a breeze rustled the trees, carrying a promise of summer warmth. After a moment, Daniel spoke softly. "Isabel, I know I've done nothing to deserve your trust. But I'm trying." Her gaze shifted to the stack of bills, the notes, the organized folders. She saw the strain in his eyes, a man desperate to rebuild a crumbling foundation. "I can see that," she admitted, her voice trembling with lingering hurt. "And I appreciate it, but I'm still," she hesitated, searching for the right words. "Hurt?" He nodded, lowering his eyes. "I understand." She looked down at her belly, gently rubbing it. "The baby's moving a lot these days. I'm almost at 37 weeks. Closer to term." "That's great," Daniel said, a flicker of genuine excitement in his voice. "Can I feel?" he asked tentatively, voice shaking with hope. Isabel paused, torn between her emotional walls and the simple desire to share this miraculous moment with him. Slowly, she nodded. He approached, cautiously placing a hand on her stomach. For a few seconds, nothing. Then a small kick against his palm. He broke into a quiet smile, tears threatening to spill. "Wow." She saw his reaction and felt a pang of longing for the days when they would marvel together at every kick and movement. But the chasm of betrayal still loomed in her heart. She offered a wan smile before withdrawing. "Thank you for everything you've been doing," she murmured. "But I need time." He nodded solemnly. "I'll give you all the time you need." He stepped back, returning to the table as Isabel retired to the couch. It was a small moment, a fragile bridge between them. As Isabel's due date neared, tensions ebbed and flowed. Some days, Isabel felt a softening in her anger. Other days, she remembered Daniel's betrayal with fresh pain. She found herself crying at odd times, mourning the marriage she once believed unbreakable. Yet Daniel remained steady, honoring his promise not to press for forgiveness but simply to help in every way possible. Meanwhile, Emma sensed a shift in the household's atmosphere. The arguments had ceased, replaced by quieter, more thoughtful interactions. She often found her parents in the same room, not exactly close, but no longer worlds apart. She clung to the hope that they might find their way back to each other, especially when the new baby arrived. That moment finally came on a warm Saturday morning. Isabel awoke to a familiar pain, but this time it was accompanied by calm knowledge rather than panic. She was almost at full term, and the contractions felt controlled, deliberate. She alerted Daniel, who rushed to gather the hospital bag they'd prepared. This time, there was no frantic chase, no ignoring of calls. He helped her into the car gently, Emma riding in the back seat with wide, excited eyes. Arriving at the hospital, Daniel managed the paperwork while nurses quickly ushered Isabel into a birthing suite. Dr. Ramirez arrived soon after, pleased with how Isabel had carried the pregnancy to near term despite the earlier scare. Labor stretched through the day. Daniel stayed by Isabel's side, offering ice chips, massaging her back, whispering words of encouragement. She allowed his presence, needing the support. Carla arrived to take care of Emma in the waiting room, though Emma insisted on poking her head in to see Mommy and say good luck. As the contractions intensified, Isabel gripped Daniel's hand. Her eyes locked on his. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. In the pain, she saw a flicker of the old Daniel, the one who had proudly held her hand in the delivery room when Emma was born, the one who had cried tears of joy at her first cry. Sweat beaded on her forehead, and the doctor's voice guided her. One final push, and a new life entered the world. A piercing cry, small yet triumphant, filled the room. Tears streamed down Daniel's face as he watched the nurses tend to the newborn, a baby boy. Isabel lay back, tears of relief and joy mixing with lingering pain. When they placed the baby in her arms, she felt a rush of maternal love. She glanced at Daniel, who leaned over, eyes locked on their son. Gently, she shifted the baby, allowing him to see more clearly. "He's perfect," Daniel whispered, voice trembling. Isabel nodded, tears falling freely. The child was a symbol of new beginnings, and also of everything that had nearly been destroyed. Outside, Emma and Carla waited, soon joining the scene with hushed excitement. In the days that followed, Daniel continued to support Isabel, taking on night feedings and diaper changes without complaint. Emma was enthralled by her baby brother, constantly asking if she could hold him. Isabel watched them, her heart swelling with gratitude for her children's well-being, yet still harboring wounds from Daniel's infidelity. A week after the baby's birth, Isabel sat in the rocking chair in the nursery, cradling her son as he drifted to sleep. Daniel entered quietly, taking a seat on a nearby ottoman. They watched the baby in silence for a while. "Thank you for letting me be here," Daniel said softly, breaking the silence. "I know it wasn't easy for you." Isabel looked at him, exhaustion and emotion etched on her face. "I did it for the baby and Emma," she admitted. "But somewhere along the line, I realized I wanted you here too. Despite everything, we built this family together. And I see how hard you've been trying." He exhaled, relief mingling with fear. "Does that mean you forgive me?" She shook her head slowly. "Not entirely. Forgiveness is a process. But I'm willing to try to rebuild what we had. For our children, yes, but also for us, if we can find it again." His eyes filled with tears, and he nodded. "I'll keep doing everything I can to earn your trust back." Carefully, he reached out to place a hand on Isabel's knee. She didn't pull away. It was a small gesture, but it felt monumental. The future remained uncertain. They both knew healing wouldn't happen overnight. There would be therapy sessions, candid conversations, and moments where anger or doubt would resurface. Yet, for the first time in a long while, there was genuine hope, a fragile, precious hope that with time and effort, their family could be rebuilt. Emma peeked around the nursery door, eyes lighting up at the sight of her parents sitting close. She tiptoed in, gazing at her baby brother who slept peacefully in Isabel's arms. Daniel opened his arm, inviting Emma into a side hug. She climbed onto his lap, the three of them huddled around the sleeping baby. In that moment, they formed a picture reminiscent of Emma's drawing, a family together under one roof, albeit scarred and cautious, but together. Whether they stayed that way would depend on countless decisions yet to be made, but for now, they were united in love for the new life in Isabel's arms. And for Daniel, regret would remain his constant reminder of how close he had come to losing everything. Every smile from Emma, every gentle coo from the newborn, and every tired glance from Isabel would fuel his determination to be worthy of their love. The betrayal of the past would never fully disappear, but in the hush of that nursery, it seemed possible to chart a path where their story wouldn't end in heartbreak, but instead, in hard-won redemption. I'm glad you made it to the end. I hope you enjoyed the story. Please go ahead and generously hit that like button and subscribe for more captivating tales like this. We'd love to hear from you. What lessons have you learned from this story? Share your thoughts in the comments below. See you in the next story.